I want to welcome everybody. My name is Brian Campbell. I'm the Director of Sustainability Education. I'm thrilled to have such a great turnout tonight. As you may know, this is the second in a series of sustainability talks we have this semester, most of which are focused around energy issues and entrepreneurship in some way. So we're thrilled to have Tim Dwight here tonight. I'm going to go through a few little announcements or other sustainability related things, and then we'll turn the floor over to him. So there's a sign-up sheet going around if you want to be on an email list to get more updates about events like this throughout the semester. In addition, there's a sheet on there where you can sign up if you're interested. So tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday this week, we have a special opportunity to join with activist Ed Fallon, who's walking the route of the proposed Bakken pipeline. So this is a pipeline that would carry crude oil from North Dakota. We heard a little bit about some of that a couple weeks ago here on campus. Proposed to carry that through the state of Iowa. So if you're interested in learning more, I'm going to be shuttling students tomorrow and Friday to go walk for a couple hours with Ed Fallon. He's walking 400 miles across the state, so he's close to us at the end of this week. If you're interested, sign up on that sheet or send me an email. A couple other little things. So the Green Fund has applications out right now. If you have an idea for a sustainability related project and you want some funding, they have thousands of dollars to give away to students who have creative ideas. So it can be something big, it can be something small. You can contact Jordan Drake or send an email to greenfund@central.edu to get an application. Those are due Friday, so there might be some flexibility to get a really good idea and talk to Jordan tonight. I'm hiring, so if you're interested in working in the Office of Sustainability Education, I'm looking for folks to help with sustainable food projects like the All Iowa Meal, or event planning, somebody to work in the organic garden. So either for this spring or for next academic year, if you're interested in being part of the work of sustainability, getting a little bit of pay and some great experience, you can talk to me about that. And like I said, this is the second in our series of sustainability speakers. Mark your calendars for April 14th and 15th. Rick Bass will be on campus. Rick Bass is an environmental writer who worked in the petroleum industry, moved to Montana, and began to write a lot about wilderness and environmental protection. He's gotten quite involved in climate activism over the last several years. So he'll be here April 14th and 15th as part of the Sustainability Speakers Series and the Writers Reading Series as well. So mark your calendars for that. Tonight, we're thrilled, as I said, to have Tim Dwight here. As many of you know, he's a solar entrepreneur, owns the California-based Integrated Power Corporation that does engineering, procuring, and installing of photovoltaic systems, mostly for commercial and industrial and utility customers. Tim's a native of Iowa City and president of the Iowa Solar Energy Trade Association. He'll talk a lot about that tonight and tell us about his work promoting solar as a business person and as a native of Iowa. He's thinking about what the future looks like for solar energy here. And as you may also know, Tim is a former football and track star at the University of Iowa, played 10 seasons in the NFL, and in addition to his work on renewable energy, also is the founder of the Tim Dwight Foundation that sponsors youth football camps, whose proceeds support the Children's Hospital of Iowa and the Tim Dwight Scholarship Fund. So help me in welcoming Tim Dwight to our campus.
How's everybody doing? Yeah. First time in Pella. Kind of fun here. Small. It's cool. It's nice and tight. 1,300 students here. Something like that, 1,500. City High, we had 1,300. So kind of the same size in high school. So I bet you all have a nice little tank community here. So that's good. Because you miss that when you kind of get outside of Iowa, you see the big cities and live in San Diego, New York, Boston, and you see kind of a disconnect a little bit. So it's kind of nice to get back and see people kind of in tight-knit quarters and get along. And it's how you kind of grow, I think, as a society. But thanks for coming tonight. This is kind of a new venture for me. I've been at it for 5 years. Can't believe it's been 5 years, and I've been retired for almost 8 years now out of football. So life goes really fast. So you kids, when you're done with college, I mean, it's before you know it, you're married, and your kids, and you're 30. freak out. And then age of 40, like I'm almost 40 in a couple months, and I'm freaking out. Right? So it's like it goes fast. So you got to figure out which one to do, which one to put your time and effort into and your energy into. So, kind of give you a little background. When I got out of football, I took a year off. I was 33 years old. Played football my whole life. Right? Ran track, had a lot of success in doing that, and was trying to figure out what I want to do. Well, I had an opportunity to look at a solar company in California, and I liked our business model because it was very flexible. And all the, August and September's playing football here in the state and being outside a lot my whole life. I knew there was a lot of sun. I didn't know as much sun as we have in Iowa. We have a ton of sun. Iowa's like 16th in the country in sun irradiation. That means like if we're 16th in oil, we're 16th in sun here. So it's a pretty massive resource that we have. And we have a ton of wind, which changes a lot of things for our state, as in the dynamics that we can deploy energy at. I mean, wind is a very important resource. A lot of base load energy. A lot of energy that runs 24 hours a day. Right, we get a lot of wind at night and a lot of sun during the day. So it's interesting how these two technologies can really play with each other. But I didn't know anything about energy, anything about solar. I flew up to San Francisco, and this guy was talking about solar energy, and I'm like, okay. Looking at it, kicking it around, but then started paying attention to the markets that were driving this technology. When solar came in, the first solar cell was built in 1831, 1831. Okay, 1800s, right? Early, long time ago, before the combustion engine and before all that stuff, right? Invented 1% efficient back then. Okay, and then they got kicked around like in the 30s, like Pac Bell and all that, and they got about 6% efficient. And then NASA started putting things off the Earth, and we can't power anything off gasoline in space because there's no oxygen, right? You have to have fuel, you have to have oxygen, you have to have explosion and spark, right? So they put a lot of solar cells on these systems, on our satellites up there. So the solar energy was kind of brought through a lot of aeronautics, a lot of NASA, a lot of military type things and applications. So then in about 70s, there was a huge oil crisis. Oil went from 15 cents a gallon to 35 cents a gallon, right? 15 cents a gallon, like 30s, 40s, 50 cents. I mean, 1973, so they shut down like in America. Huge oil embargo going on. So Jimmy Carter back then was like, we're gonna go solar, right? We'll push solar industry into the marketplace. And we were trying to focus on homes. At that time, solar was very expensive, huge cost to put this stuff in because it wasn't accepted. It wasn't like our computers, like our cell phones, like all the stuff you young kids see that technology, like the cell phone you hold in your hand today. If you go back to 1985 when the first cell phone jumped on, that technology you hold in your hand was worth trillions of dollars. It wouldn't work, but it worth trillions of dollars. The technology you hold in your hands, right? 20, 30 years ago. So solar, is going to be worth. It's worth trillions of dollars, and it's going to keep dropping because of scale and because of the energy it uses. So when I came back to Iowa, I was like, hey, we have a flexible model. I'm going to go back to Iowa. I want to see what kind of market we have here. We didn't have a market. That was about 2009. So then I learned that energy is about policy. So I was like, okay, policy. I got to go to the Capitol. I got to talk to people. I got to meet legislators. I got to build a solar association. So I helped build the Iowa Solar Energy Trade Association, which we used to call Small Wind, but Small Wind guys weren't kind of holding their weight in the Capitol. I'm a guy where, if you don't want to work for me, I'm going to cut you loose, man. Because I don't know what people want to work. So we kind of cut the wind guys loose because they weren't doing anything. So, about 2012, we first got our first tax credit passed. Right? Small little $1.5 million fund. Okay? Small fund we got passed. But spurred about $650,000 of the use of the $1.5 million. The next year, in full use of 1 year, oversubscribed by $500,000. We had 1.5 million in the fund, we had 2 million in subscriptions. So we needed more money. So last year we went for 4.5 million. Now we had 6 million subscribed. So this year we're going for more money because the industry is growing. So I do a lot of stuff on the policy level too, because energy is all about policy. Over the years, when the first electrical grid came about in the 1800s, Con Edison, 1889, kicked on the first coal plant in New York City. All right, well, to build these big plants, you had to have customers, right? Well, it's hard to go to customer like we do with solar. So what happened was these utilities got together and they go to these cities and say, we'll provide you power, but you got to guarantee us all these customers. And all of a sudden we became monopolized in energy. So energy is very monopolized. You have these territories, like in Iowa, RECs, Rural Electric Cooperatives, and you probably buy your power from them. They own this territory. Alliant Energy owns this territory. in other territories around the state. No one can jump across these lines, right? Everybody has their own territory. Well, solar changes all this because now your customer is generating. And they used to sell power to the customer, now the customer's getting power with them. Which is a lot of struggle going on with that because we're changing a 100-year-old way of business and we're flipping it upside down. But we have to do it through policy, so we had to create this guy. And we've been doing some things in the Capitol in Spurn. We have like 34 solar businesses now in the state of Iowa. And 90% of our market's rural, right? You gotta think of a solar array as a combine, right? Our yield is electricity, not corn, not soybeans, it's electricity, right? Sits out there in the field and yields power every single day. Like today, huge yields going on across Iowa. I mean, massive amounts of power kicking off with solar today. So my company, what we do is we do like EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction. So we're kind of the smarts and parts of the group, and then we find local trades in the area to put this stuff in, right? So we kind of engineer it, we get the right equipment, and then we give it to the trades to install it for people. There's all kinds of, we're really into financial, because solar is a financial investment. It's like an annuity. You know what an annuity is? You buy something with your cash, and then it's got a 25-year cash flow stream on it. This gives you money every year. That's what solar is. It's like an annuity. Because it's technology that's stable, doesn't move, so it doesn't break down. It's not a wind turbine that spins around like that. That stuff breaks down, right? Your car breaks down, right? Everybody knows our car breaks down because it moves. Solar doesn't move. Solid state technology is like your hard drives. So once the sun comes up, it just keeps on. It takes that DC current, changes the AC current. But to first get into this, you gotta understand about electricity. Because when you sit down and talk to customers, nobody knows anything about electricity. Electricity runs our lives, right? If we lost the grid today, in certain scenarios, we wouldn't have power for 2 years. You're talking mass hysteria in two weeks. No water, no pumps, your cell phones aren't working, nothing's working in our country. So it's very interesting on what this grid, how it's been built, and how it needs to change rapidly. Because of the way it's very, very susceptible to terrorist attacks, all kinds of things. And so when you get into energy, you really got to kind of learn all these different aspects of it. You got to learn about, trying to get you guys policy, you got to learn about the technologies, you got to learn about costs, you got to learn about risks. Because when you build these 250 million watt coal plants, that's a $750 million investment. That's a 50-year asset life to it, right? But you got to be smart about what that investment is, because down the road, like some of these power plants nowadays on fossil fuels, if you're building a power plant on fossil fuels right now, that plant could be obsolete 10 years from now. Because solar technology is going to be so cheap, it's going to wipe out that cost. It's going to be cheaper than that power coming off that plant. So that plant's going to sit out there stranded for 40 years and have a 40 years left on it, but it's not going to be used. And who pays for all that? The ratepayers pay for all that because you have no choice, right? You're in a monopoly. So we are trying to change the game in the monopoly. We're trying to get this. So you got to understand about the grid, and you got to go back. So I've got a little video here that I hope works. I have it. This is a cartoon, so it's kind of fun.
Here's a question for you. How many people does it take to turn on a light bulb? The answer seems simple. Just walk into a dark room, flip a switch, and instantly you can see, right? Well, the truth is there's a lot more to generating and delivering electrical power than you've probably imagined. Hi, I'm Lee Patrick Sullivan with Energy Now, and this Energy 101 video explains the system used to generate electricity. And it also explains what it really takes to turn on a light bulb. In order to understand energy, we first need to start at the source, literally. Mother Nature provides the natural resource we use to generate power. From natural gas to coal, ocean tides to mountain winds, the energy we need to create electricity must first be mined, harnessed, or collected from the earth. Some of these resources are finite, including fossil fuels like coal and oil, but others are unlimited, like solar or wind power. But a lump of coal or a strong breeze alone won't create the power that turns on your light. For every energy source, a chemical or mechanical process is required to turn it into usable electricity. Every day, researchers work to find innovative ways to use our limited resources, process raw materials, harness renewables more efficiently, and find entirely new energy sources. Today, the majority of America's electricity comes from thermal power plants. Fuels like coal, natural gas, biomass, and uranium are used to heat water until it produces steam, which powers a turbine and generates electricity. That steam turns propeller-like blades around the rotor inside the turbine. This turning rotor connects to a main shaft which spins magnets with a coil inside a generator. It's the generator inside the turbine that converts mechanical energy into electric energy and creates electricity. Steam is an efficient method of producing electricity because the water can be recycled and reused as it changes back and forth between liquid and gaseous states. Transporting electricity from the power plant to your home is an entirely different process. Current technology cannot cost-effectively store large amounts of electricity, so significant challenges exist when it comes to transferring that electricity across long distances. Just enough electricity has to be generated to meet demand at all times and be transmitted through power lines to reach your light switch. Too much or too little power can crash the transmission system and cause a blackout. That's why a complex mix of logistics, management, and infrastructure is needed to transmit electricity from power generators to consumers. Enter the electricity grid, also known as simply the grid. The North American electricity grid is actually made of 4 large grid systems: the Western grid, the Eastern grid, the Texas grid, and a grid covering the Canadian province of Quebec. These independent regional networks of power plants and transmission lines carry electric energy at high voltage within their area to local utilities. There are very limited links between the 4 grids, which means electricity generated from a wind turbine in West Texas cannot reach an apartment building in New York City. For electricity to move through one of the 4 grids, its voltage must first be increased by a device called a transformer. Then the electricity can travel long distances across high voltage transmission lines. These high voltage lines are generally strung between giant metal towers. They stretch for miles from power plants to local substations in each neighborhood. You've probably seen substations along the side of the road and wonder what they do. Well, their job is stepping down electric voltages from levels as high as 765,000 volts closer to the 110 volts you use in your home. The electricity from the power line on your street passes through another transformer, which steps down the voltage once more, and then it travels along the line into your house. From there, the electricity enters your breaker box, and it is then distributed to light sockets and outlets. All you have to do is flip a switch. So, as you can see, from the raw materials to the power lines on your street, there's so much more to the electricity ecosystem than meets the eye.
Anybody know that stuff? Some of you? How energy works? See, like when you're born, like, you understand, like our industrialization in America happened in the 1950s. First highway happened in 1957. 1957 wasn't that long ago, was it? Right? Our country was like the first country in the world to really industrialize the way we did. So you got to look back and see these systems and how we built this stuff. I mean, the growth in energy in this country in the 60s was massive, 10% a year. And that's when people had manufacturing plants, right? And before they were selling to the local customer. Well, once the roads went in, now I got an avenue to send my product out to all these other markets. So massive amounts of construction happened in the 60s, huge amounts. So if you look back on the highways, when industrialization happened, it wasn't in the 30s and 40s. 30s, 70% of America in the 1930s lived the world. No electricity, 1930s. 1940s. 1940s was World War II. Right? All these men went to war, all women went to work. And they were thinking about what we need to create an economy. So we create consumerism, we create an economy to buy things. Right? 70% of our economy today is consumerism. What we buy every single day. All right? So, that's how energy was built back in the 1800s, and that's how it's still done today. Because in monopolized markets, there's no competition. But what does competition do to markets? Challenges markets. I have a better solution. Oh yeah, show me. Boom, you show somebody and everybody moves to that. You know, like telecommunications. Back in the 1970s and 60s, there were baby bells. There were like 7 or 8 telecommunications companies that owned all the telecommunications landlines in America. Well, back in the late 70s, the United States government said, you know what, we're going to break this up. Broke them up. All of a sudden, these other companies started happening. Boom, cell phone jumps on the market in 1984. Big thing, right? Huge antenna. Had to pull a handle off. All you could do is hear someone's voice. And it was spotty. You couldn't hear really any towers anywhere, right? Well, now look what a cell phone does today. You kids live off of every single thing. You've got to connect to it. You bank through it, you buy through it, communicate through it. It's everywhere. Right? Imagine me taking that away from you right now. Right? Going back to landline telephone, where you got a message, you have to go back to your apartment and push the voicemail and listen to a recording, right? Imagine that's where I grew up. And now we're growing up with this stuff that tells you where people are at, when they're at, always posting, always this, right? So, electricity. So you try to get people familiar with changes in markets. Like from the landline telephone to the cell phone was a massive jump in our country. Massive jump in technology. Solar and distributed generation through solar and wind is a massive jump in energy generation. Okay? It creates challenges, but it creates massive amounts of benefits. It's free and it's clean. So, what's a watt? All right, so this is how the utility charges you, right? Like a dozen eggs, right? You always go to a store and you buy a dozen, you buy 18, right? Well, in the kilowatt, in the energy world, they charge you by the watt for buying 1,000 blocks. That's how many hours you burn those 1,000 watts. So it's called a kilowatt hour. All right? So 1 kilowatt hour equals 1,000 watts over time over hours. Okay, so when you live in your apartments, you look at your bills, they'll tell you how many kilowatt hours you burn, and they'll say times, and the dollar sign, and like maybe 8 cents a kilowatt, 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So some of you are probably doing 300, 400 kilowatt hours a month, something like that, maybe paying 40, 50 bucks. So your energy bills are in your apartments maybe, 70 bucks, depending on what kind of technology, LED lights, and you shut your stuff off, and you leave all your stuff on. You know, all these things can, all your habits tell you kind of what you use and what you use and what you don't. So this is our consumption. This is our paradigm in America. Buildings take a lot of hot energy. Industry, another one. You know, car manufacturing, any type of manufacturing, clothing manufacturing. Then transportation. This is powered mostly by natural gas and coal and nuclear. So is that. A lot of natural gas in industry, right? Because they got a lot of systems got to kick on during certain times, and they need a lot of power. So natural gas is a type of technology you can deploy really fast because you can pressurize it, you can deploy it quick. Nuclear and coal, they take a long time to rev up, so they're more your baseline energy load. Transportation, pretty much all oil. Not a whole lot of electricity right now, but that's changing. All right, so by the source, so petroleum is a big one. All right, coal was a big one. 60% of Iowa is powered by coal. Natural gas has become a big one because of new fracking techniques where they come down, instead of putting one straw in the well, they cut all the way across it. Right, so they can suck out the gas a lot faster. Right, but these gas wells that they're punching, 35,000 wells drilled last year. So they suck them out and they're gone, and then boom, they move to another one. Well, to drill these wells, it takes a ton of energy and a ton of water, and it's polluted. Right, and it's all these chemicals that they're burying into the ground. Right, and they say they're not going to get water and all this stuff, and you're like, oh, okay. Like there's an area down in Kansas right now. Never had any earthquake activity. They started doing fracking down there, natural gas. Over 300 tremor readouts they've had over the last couple of years now. Because what they do is they go down to the ground about a mile and then they cut all the way across, and all that gas just flies up. Well, it's not all sucking through that long line and coming out. It's coming up all the way through. Like you go to Colorado, those natural gas wells are right under people's homes. And you're like, man, you people are just breathing all that in, right? All these chemicals, all this stuff. Renewables, very small part. Solar is a very small part. We're less than 1% in the whole mix. In 50 years from now, solar is going to eat all that up. In 50 years from now, just like the cell phone ate up the landline telephone, solar will eat every generation piece up because the sun is free, it's dependable, and this technology is 1% generation right now, or less than 1%. And we're almost the low cost on the market. We're almost the lowest cost generator right now. We have less than 1% penetration in the market. Imagine that. Imagine if you had a lipstick, and you went into a lipstick market, and you were the second least cost effective, but you only had a 1% penetration rate in that market. What happens to your cost when you hit 10%, 20%, right? Your cost drives way down because of scale, all right? A lot of these other guys, you know, they've been way ahead, you know, plus they don't have to count for the pollution. They don't have to count for the free water that they get, for all the tax credits they get. A lot of these other industries have been around a long time, and they got a lot of the stuff that now solar and renewables are starting to get because people are starting to realize it's the way to go. So that's kind of the breakdown of renewables, wood, geothermal, hydropower. Hydropower has been built out early. That was one of the first generators in our country. Do I even need this right now? So that's how you do it today.
Good. Here, is that better? That's how we do it. Got it on my throat, jeez. That's how we gotta do it today. We dig it out of the ground, we mine it, you know, we put it in these big old areas, these big pits, or we shoot it out on a train, probably a train track somewhere around here, and then we dig it up, put it in these little, you know, little aggregate runs up there, and then we grind it up, and each one of those big old pipes, those towers, is probably around maybe 50 megawatts or something, so it's about a 200 megawatt plant. And it's got the big cooling towers and all that. It might be bigger than that. But most of your coal plants run about 100 megawatts for the old ones, and about 250 to sometimes 500 megawatts. All right, so to give you an idea, the power in Des Moines probably pulls 7 or 8 megawatts of power, maybe more than that, maybe 10 megawatts of power, maybe a little more than that, I don't know. In small towns, no, more than that. Probably 60 to 70 megawatts, because most of your small towns pull about 2 to 3 megawatts. All right, so you know, if you had a 250 megawatt coal plant like that, you could power probably, you know, let's say, I don't know, 30, 40 towns in Iowa. So, you know, we don't have a huge demand here because we have a huge population, but we have a lot of coal plants in the state because it's been run by monopolies that have been, you know, living by this technology for a long time. So, what we're talking about transformation, right? Like we used to live in horse and buggy back in the day. Now we live by, you know, in the 50s, we lived by the car and the truck. And then now in the 2000s, we live by, our commerce goes over what? Over the internet. Another transformation is happening. So we need to transfer into solar, into wind. And in Iowa, we got a lot of that stuff up top. And we're starting to get a lot of this. The neat thing about this is, when we put solar in Iowa, that money stays in our state. You know how much money that we kick out of our state for energy services a year? Take a guess. For coal, for natural gas, for all energy services. Take a wild guess what leaves our state. Somebody take a guess. 5 billion. 14 billion, right? 14 billion dollars, that's as big as our corn industry. Okay, right? So how many more meters are there in Iowa than there are farmers owning corn, right? So not a lot of farmers, but they own a big share of that market, right? Energy is a big share, $14 billion market, and a lot of people pay into that. So every time we put a solar module in, a wind turbine in, we take a piece off that 14 billion and keep it in our state. And what we've learned through sustainability and some of these things your kids are learning is when we keep money in our state, it turns over 4 times. So $14 billion turns over 4 times. How much money is that? $56 billion a year. Okay? Anybody been to Kuwait? Kuwait City? Kuwait? No? Never been? Why not? It's one of the richest places in the world. Gave them a $100 bill American. They gave me back $25 Kuwait. Right? Started looking around. Workers down there, they're not Kuwaiti. Guys digging in the dirt, they're not Kuwaiti. Servers, they're not Kuwaiti. I asked this Kuwaiti, I'm like, hey, so your workers, nobody works here, it's Kuwaiti. They're like, no. I said, we don't do service work. We import our workers to do that. I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. How do you do that? Well, because we have so much oil. Right? Kuwait is one of the most richest countries in the world because they have oil that's 10 feet below them. They have no trees in that country. It's dirt. That's the richest country in the world. 4-to-1 American. They have $25 back. I gave them $100 American. Right? No Kuwaiti works. They all get government jobs, make $100,000 a year. Imagine that, they just shop the whole time. Huge malls in Kuwait. Huge malls. Expensive watches, all kinds of things. Expensive cars. I mean, they can own so much more than what we own. But we've got the power to change all that, right? We got the power to do this and to build our own economy of our own energy. Because energy runs the world. Energy is a $6 trillion a year industry. It's the biggest industry in the world because it runs the world. Without energy, nothing goes on. You can't have hospitals that run, you do surgeries, you guys can communicate, banking can't happen. Energy is a necessity for everybody, especially in developed countries. All right? So, here's a solar market. All all right? This is the United States. So obviously in the Southwest, everybody's gone to Phoenix and New Mexico, massive. They get about 5 to 6 hours of sun hours on average. Iowa, we get 4.5. Germany used to be the world's market. Look what they get. Now they got a lot of solar down here, but that solar is equivalent to Seattle. Anybody been to Seattle? Yeah, cloudy over there all the time, right? I had a little REC, little Farmers Electric Property down in Kelowna. 600 people in this REC. Their general manager went over to Germany last year on a week trip, and he's taking all these pictures. And then these solar pictures and 6 megawatts. Our wind turbines here in Iowa are 2.5 to 3 megawatts. Germany, they're twice the size. It takes them 9 months to pour these towers, concrete towers. And then these 6 megawatt wind turbines are massive. All up in the north. That's where they get all the wind in the north. Right? But he's taking all these pictures. And I'm like, man, Warren, like, did you take all those pictures the same day? Because it's cloudy. He's like, Tim, it was cloudy there the whole time. Germany get 2.5 sun hours on average. They get half the resource that we get. And these used to be the #1 market in the world. Now the United States is the #1 market in the world. Like California's been leading, Arizona was leading for a little bit, but now the utility's trying to shut that down. Colorado was a big leader, Iowa's become a leader, Missouri a little bit, on the eastern coast. Like Massachusetts, huge leader in energy. We've got about 5 gigawatts of wind in the state. Massachusetts is going to have about 2 gigawatts of solar in the state in 3 years. Huge amount of jobs going on there. Massive growth rate. And it takes a little bit amount of money to do it, you know? So it kind of shows you, you know, people like, there's no sun in Iowa. It's like, you want that? And especially during the winter times, when it's cold, like your computers. Anybody walk into a server room? Like all these servers that are all running your Dropboxes and all that stuff? Is it hot or cold in that server room? Freezing, right? Because it runs efficient. Your computers and all this stuff runs more efficient because it's semiconductivity. So in the winter months, when it snows in Iowa, what happens the next day? How clear is it? Super clear, right? So our systems in Iowa, we crank out tons of power, really efficient, and a lot of power in the winter months. So we crank out a lot more power than we do in this state, which is real exciting. Okay, so this kind of shows you some growth, okay? PV installations, this is by quarter. It's 2010. There was a recession that happened here in 2008, okay? The whole global world shut down. Like, you kids don't understand what happened in 2008. It was a bad deal. Like, the whole world shut down. The financial markets almost all collapsed. You know, the housing market went upside down. People had a house that was worth $800,000 and they had $750,000 against it, and all of a sudden the market collapsed and it was worth $400,000. Everything went upside down, right? So we went through this. Well, this industry has been exploding through this downturn in the market. If I go back to 2008, you'll see a little bit of drop in the third quarter, and all of a sudden, boom, it takes off again. So these are in megawatts. So back in 2007, 2008, that's what we did in 1 year. In 2010, that's what we did in a quarter. All right. So to give you an idea, this is in America now. That is about the size of a small coal plant. So small coal plants are about 100 megawatts. Okay, we'll divide that by 250 watts per module. Let me how many modules. Take 150 million divided by 250. That'll tell you how many modules went in 1 quarter. And then you can see in the second quarter, the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, boom, 350. And then in 2011, almost a double, boom, another one. This industry is almost doubling every year. It's accelerating so fast. In the utility industry, it takes like planning of 10 to 20 years to get ready for stuff like this. This stuff is happening super fast on it. So it's, you know, it's kind of scary at first because there's a lot of things that have to happen within our grid to be able to absorb this energy and how fast it's moving. Q3, you know, we did 2 gigawatts in 1 quarter. Okay, a nuclear power plant is 1 gigawatt. 1 gigawatt. Now it's 90% efficient, so you got to build almost 5 times the amount of solar. Okay, but we built 2 gigawatts in 3 months. It takes you 10 years to build a nuclear power plant. 10 years. And we could build a nuclear power plant. We're going to build nuclear power plants in about every 3 months now going forward. I mean, it's amazing the growth of what's happening in this industry and how everybody's going to solar. So you're thinking, okay, and nuclear is so expensive, crazy expensive, and it's polluted and it's really dangerous. So this kind of gives you an idea what the new annual capacity around the world is. 2006 wasn't a whole lot. 2007, boom. 2008, recession, kind of worked through that, and boom, boom. Look at the growth. Look at the United States. Where are we at? We are north and central, so we're kind of here. We're kind of growing. the top one. You know, you got Asia, China got big into it, because China pretty much got ahead of everybody in the manufacturing space. They're making all the modules. China was supplying 80% of the world's modules back in 2008. They were cornering the market in solar, right? They were a lot cheaper because they scaled faster. They were supplying all the modules in Europe back in the early 2000s when solar was starting to take its traction. And the United States started driving to it. Now you see in North America, you see some of these countries down like in Central America, I was just in Belize, they pay 3-4 times the energy costs down there. All these islands down there, like the Virgin Islands and stuff, this is one school, still elementary school, not elementary, high school is paying $55,000 a month in energy costs. Here, they priced it here, it costs them $5,000 a month. So it goes to show you, like, there's certain areas in the world that, man, these people are in prison just by energy costs because it's their most high expensive operating costs they have, so they can't grow. This shows you penetration, okay? PV contributions to electrical demand in 2013. So Italy, France, and Germany, all these guys, quite a bit of penetration. United States, not much. Like I said, we're 0.4% in generation, but we're growing. 20 years ago, it took 80 minutes to put in a solar system. 3 years ago, it was 2 years ago, it was every 4 minutes. Now, it's about a minute and a half. A minute and a half, a new system goes into our country, which is great because that's securing our energy resource for future generations forever. Like once you go solar, 15 years from now, when the solar modules have 25-year production warranty for the last 50 years in the market, you're still going to look at it and go, wow, I can take those down, I can buy a less cost module with more robust, more connectivity, more harvest, all that, because what happens to technology in markets when they make money, they get better. Like our cell phones. Every cell, Apple comes out with a new one every, 6 months? I got an Indian guy go down in Iowa City, he looks at my phone, he's like, oh, you got the iPhone 5? Like, how do you know? They go, oh, the little recorder thing, and I'm like, well, you know, oh, every 6 months they come out with phones. These Indian guys, they know the technology stuff. It's pretty interesting. So, I'm teaching you all stuff on my phone. So this is jobs, right? So we're talking about like economic development, right? So when you make this module, everything below the module is 75% local, right? Engineering, installation, sales, small business. This is small business, this type of stuff, because we're dealing with the customer one-on-one. This is how our country was built, through small business, not big corporations, right? Like, have you guys looked at the architecture lately, what's going on in corporate America? Some of the stuff that you build, like some of these new buildings, how boring are they? How cheap do they look? Cheap, boring. Anybody can, like you look at the architecture, like, really? And then you go to Europe and you're like, geez, wow, right? So, when you talk about jobs, right? Per megawatt, solar has a lot more jobs than wind, than coal, and natural gas, and a lot of nuclear, because it takes a lot of people to put the solar module in place. And you're doing it in these small increment amounts, right? You're doing it at 250 watts. You're not doing it at 250 million watts. Like when you build a coal plant, when you build a nuclear plant. So the jobs in this industry are massive. Massive amount of jobs. We got about 200,000 people in the industry right now, with less than 1% generation. Coal has 80,000 jobs. Solar, we have almost 200,000 jobs. And coal is 60% market penetration. Solar is less than 1%. So how many jobs are we going to have when solar is 15% penetration? 30% penetration. A lot, right? A lot of jobs. Now there's probably some shrinkage in there a little bit to scale, but massive. Okay, so solar, PV, photovoltaics. Say that 10 times fast. Photovoltaics. Go on. Photovoltaics. Yeah. Yeah. Photons from the sun, volts, all right? It's all low voltage, okay? So, these solar modules, these black things, they're called modules, not panels, modules. And inside those modules, there's these little cells, and they got a silicon, which is sand, right? So they put the sand in this little, like, box, and they throw it to the big ingot, looks like a salami. And they slice it up in these wafers, okay? And they take those wafers that are perfect, and they put those in, those are called monocells. And all the stuff that gets cut up and falls on the ground, they scoop that up and they put that in another cell, and they call it polycell. Poly, multiple, or multi-cell. So you have monocells and polycells. Okay? Well then those get set into a series. So in a module you have a positive side and negative side, and then you connect the other one, positive side, negative, take the other one, right? So you put these in series. I mean circuits. Like one side goes all the way, like that's connected to the top, upper right one's connected to that one, it loops around to that one, and then you connect a circuit. And then you do another circuit, and another circuit, another circuit, another circuit, another circuit, right? You might have like 500 modules of a job. So you have a certain amount of circuits you have to create within those modules. So those modules, they create voltage. Because each one of those modules kicks off 37 volts, right? Well, what comes out of that light plug is 120. Your dryers are 220, right? You don't want to grab 220. 220 will kill you, all right? You put these modules in strings of 13, you're talking 400 volts. And you can't shut it off because the sun doesn't shut off. You put these modules out there, they turn on right away, right? Because they grab the sun. There's no on-off switches on these. So you gotta be kind of careful when you install this stuff. So the trades out there, they don't know DC power. DC power is direct current, okay? It's the most efficient way to push energy, direct. Like when I play football, when I hit somebody, I didn't want to like try to move around them and kind of hit them. I want to hit them direct. That's when you get the most force. So PV is direct current. So man, when that direct current hits, it's boom. It's powerful stuff. I hit you with a direct current gun, I push you through the wall. If I hit you with an alternating current gun, you feel rough. You would. It's different. How it's pushed. Yeah, I have this little sound sometimes when the solar kicks on. The generation. This is generation plant, right? This isn't some like efficiency measure. This is power generation. You are getting into the business with the big boys when you create your own power. And they don't like that because they're the ones that own the market. And now you're starting to change the market. So what we do is we take all the sun's DC current and we pull it on off all these modules, right? So these cells are inked with a semiconductor dye, okay? It's a boron, right? It's a semiconductor, right? So when that electricity, the electron, there's an electron buried in there. So when an electron comes to the sun, it pops that electron off that's already buried in it and fills that space. And then another one comes, another one comes, another one comes. And then that's all connected in these modules. There are all these little wires that run across these cells. And it takes all this energy and puts it into one line. So we bring all those lines, all these multiple modules, circuits, into a DC AC inverter. So he turns that DC current, direct current, into AC current. And that's what powers our light. Back in the 1950s, we started industrializing. There was a fight between Tesla and Edison. Do we go DC, do we go AC? Well, Edison won, so we went AC. When we went DC, everybody would be having solar right now. But we went AC so the utilities could kind of keep their market and they control the marketplace. That's how they kind of control, because on AC, you can kind of whip AC a little bit further. DC, it's a straight line, so eventually you have to kind of keep revving it back up. So there's different ways, different attributes about each energy wave and what's important to it and what's not. But AC won, right? And now DC's coming back because DC's the most efficient. And it's become less cost effective. But we have to take this DC energy from the sun and we gotta integrate it into the grid, because the grid is this massive, huge force, right? We have to hook onto that force and we will integrate that thing, because during the daytime, if you have solar in your house, you're not using anything in your house because you guys are at school or your parents are at work, so you get your refrigerator running, it's pulling maybe 200 watts, some clocks in there, so you're not pulling out power in your day. Well, your solar system's kicking out 3,000 watts. So that goes into your main distribution, through your inverter, into a meter, into your main distribution panel, or your fuse box, or electrical box. And there's a back, and you open that up, and all those fuses on there, what's called a bus bar. Okay? So when that power comes from the utility, it goes right up your backbone. It's kind of like the backbone of your house. And the energy just feeds off one of those circuits. All right? What we do is we come in from the top of the backbone, we bury that coal energy right out of the house. We power everything within the house going the other way. And if we overpower the house, we send energy out to the grid. We power everything else around the grid, which is a huge asset about solar. Because when you have generation inside your grid, like if, person over there was holding a sheet, and I was holding a sheet, you were holding a sheet over there, and we were trying to keep it strong, it's kind of hard to do that. But as each one of you start standing up and holding your part of the sheet, you start to stabilize the grid. So solar does that to the grid. It creates huge value when it does that. Because it's hard to keep the grid in certain areas with outside generation punching in. It's very inefficient. Like the way our grid's built, the way that they saw how we generated and transferred. Like you look at coal trains, right? You ever see the coal train coming in from Wyoming? Anything that's coming from the west, it's all from Wyoming, right? 70% of coal trains wasted here. When you burn coal into the technology, 70% of that is heat, which is the majority of it, and particulates, and NOx and SOx, sulfur oxide, nitrous oxide. All right? So you're thinking, all these trains are coming in Iowa, 70% of that train is going to be burned up, it's going to fall in my water, it's going to fall in my air. So think about that. So right now, in the last 100 years in Iowa, the way we've been making our energy, we've been polluting ourselves. And a lot of money's been going out to these big corporations. $14 billion bucks, right? Because you got to look at the technology. Like the combustion engine in our cars right now, 20% efficient. 20%. That means 20 cents out of your dollar are actually moving. The other 80 cents is wasted. So if I had to sell you a box or a widget, and I said, all right, inside that widget, your $100 is not actually going to buy, your 20 bucks is actually going to buy what you want. All the packaging around it's going to cost $80. You're just going to throw that away. Would you buy it? You wouldn't buy it. You wouldn't buy it, right? Because you're wasting 80% of your money. Well, that's what's happening in the energy business right now. Like coal plants, 30% efficient. Combustion engine, 20%, 25% efficient. Electric car, 80% efficient. Massive amounts of savings, all right? But these are things that we don't understand because they've been around for a long time and no one's really looked at it and no one's really understood it. Okay, so this is what a solar module is, okay? So it's usually like 60 cells or 72 cells, usually run at 30 volts, 31 volts. They're made of glass, they're made of aluminum. They're benign, so you can recycle them. It takes about 6 months to work off the carbon footprint of the solar module. So to mine everything, to create it, to ship it, to get it in set in place. Once it's set in place, it takes 6 months to burn off the carbon of everything that's on top of it that's been used to make that module. And you've got 29 more years, 30 some more years of free, clean power. Think about that. It's huge value. Huge. So when we put enough of these in the state, we're going to shut down all these generators that are polluting our communities. And we're going to save a ton of money. We're going to keep all this money in our state. This is another module. This is a model cell module. This is CNEVA, Georgia Tech University. The only research department in the country, second most efficient cell in the world. A bunch of college kids down there making this module. This is the module I put in the state. This one and the one you saw earlier. It's one of the best modules in the world. It's coming right out of America, you know. And it's 19% efficient. Wait till these 25% efficient, 30% efficient. But this industry is so young right now, right? But you know, minds like your guys that are starting to see this and go, okay, there's a market here. How can I make it better? How can I make it more efficient? How can I make it more robust? Less cost. Okay, this is an inverter. This is an N-phase inverter. It's a microinverter, right? So when you have a system of like 100 modules, if you have microinverters, each one of these sits behind a module. So you have 160 modules, you get 160 microinverters. A lot of these inverters are used kind of when it's changed, like on residential houses. We have different rooftops, you know, you don't have one, like if you have a ranch house, really easy, right? Because if you put these modules in a circuit, they all have to be at the same orientation, or they all want to operate the same. Well, if you have a house that's broken up, or you have shading in the morning or afternoon, that can cover a module. If those modules are in the same string, you'll knock out all those modules. So if I was out in the sun like today, and I walked over and I laid on one of your modules in your system, I would knock out all those modules in that string. So what these guys do is if you have straight shading issues at certain times of the day for different areas, these eliminate that because each module is powered by its own inverter. So they're all separately connected. Or certain inverters, like I'll show you this next one, these are string inverters. So this will have like 30 modules that go to it, where the other one just had one module. All right? So these are more like you do residential with these, or you can multiply them and do multiple different inverters. You know, they're like 98% efficient. Usually come with like 10-year warranties. Inverter technology has been around since like the early 1900s. And we've been changing DC to AC, AC to DC, all that for a long time. They come with little LCD screens, they're kind of cool. They have a little disconnect switch right there. But yeah, so that guy does all the work. He basically just sits on the wall and changes that DC into AC. Powers right into the grid. That's what kind of an inverter bank looks like. So on the left-hand side, as the DC comes up, so we have a trough down here. Right in here, so your DC comes in, and it basically goes up around that LCD screen, and you see all these transistors and that stuff, and basically takes that DC current and starts to bend it, and then it smooths it out, creates a perfect sine wave, connects to the grid, and feeds it out into your main distribution panel into the grid. And then when the AC comes out to the right side, it goes up to an AC trough, and there's a box over here that we have to take all these. You take 160 modules, you get them all the way down to 6 inverters, and you get all that down to 2 wires and 1 ground. So we have to take all these modules and everything down to like 2 wires, 1 ground. And that ties right into your backbone, your main distribution panel. That's another inverter, it's like a refrigerator. So if you look like, it's a certain kind of install cost, right? So imagine putting all those inverters up, how much time it would take an installer compared to just putting that guy up. So you look at different, once you get to really big system sizes, you start looking at inverters like this because it lowers to less parts and pieces, which means less labor, which means you drive cost down. Because in this industry, we're trying to go drive cost down because we haven't priced carbon yet, right? When we start pricing carbon, all these technologies have been in the marketplace for a long time, it'll be super expensive. When we start pricing how energy's destroying our environment, that's pricing carbon, okay? And this technology does not destroy the environment. That's what it kind of looks like in person. So it's fairly kind of big unit, weighs about 1,500 to, you know, that's a 50 kW, they get all the way up to 100 kW, so there's 250 kW, so there's 500 kW, so there's megawatts. I mean, we got some farmers right now that are looking at doing 5 acres of solar. That's about a megawatt, which is quite a bit. This is kind of a racking, little bucket rack for ballast systems. These used to come in like 15 pieces. So imagine if you were an installer, you had 100 modules, and you had to install 15 pieces per rack. How long that would take you, right? A lot of time, a lot of parts and pieces. You're up there in cold and Iowa, freezing, trying to put these little, you know, group these little things together. So all these things in the marketplace, you got to look at and make it better, make it streamlined. These guys are like buckets, right? So once you get your lines going, you just drop these babies down, you put down the ballast blocks, boom, the modules go right on top. You can set this stuff up like super fast, which is great. It's all recyclable, it's all EPDM. But when you're on a ballast system or you're on a flat roof, you can't go too hot. You can only go about 10 degrees pitch, which lowers your production. In Iowa, it's about 30 degrees perfect if you have the ground, right? It's all about harvest, right? We want to harvest. So if you have a ballast system, you try to say, well, I'm not getting as much production, so I gotta have a lower cost of my install. I levelized cost of energy, LCOE, levelized cost of energy. That's what we keep trying to drive down in this industry because you only have so many sun hours during the day, right? So you can only produce so much power, and then you have clouds and different sun angles as where you're at, during the year. So this is the Iowa State Fair, various industry buildings. So we did a little array for the American. That's what the roof started to look like at the beginning of it. That's what the ballast bucket's on it. And the modules kind of hooked to that. And then all those hooked together and seared in circuits. So there's another system that's out in LA. These guys are like a concrete mix that just kind of threw in there. But you want to match up, you want to match up the life of the roof. Like that roof's not going to last very long, right? Well, they got to take all that off, put it all back on. Well, that's an install cost of removal. That's the install cost of reinstallment. So you try to match this stuff up with the same warranty on the roof. So that's what it kind of looks like from that. So that's probably a 5 degree pitch, But it's kind of interesting, they got shading. This is south, right? Because these are pitching that way. But they're gonna have shading issues up here, even over there. So in this part of the area, you're only gonna have so much sun window, So you look at some of these designs and like, man, someone's doing a big system, but part of that's not gonna produce as much as it should. If you got these shading in the morning, you got shading in the afternoon, and that's how we got here. So you got to look at, as a designer and engineer, you got to look at all these things in the market. And some people do it right, some people don't. Just like any other one. Some people are good, some people aren't. So that's what it kind of looks like at the Iowa State Fair. So we got a lot of rooftop in the country to put all this stuff on. It's lightweight, weighs about 5 pounds square foot. The modules are, I think, 2.9 pounds. You get some wind guards on here. So, really low parts on this. This is actually a pretty good install. This thing's taking a lot of power. That's what it kind of looks like for that. So you guys might have a ballast system, or no? Do you have a ballast system? There's another one. This is out. I don't know where this is at. There's a nice little ocean back there. But like these little guys, these guys are going to shade eventually, sometime during the day. Now it also depends on what your energy costs are. If this is down in Virgin Islands, and their energy costs are 25-30 cents kilowatt hour. Well, it's okay to have some of that shading if you're cranking out so much power, plus you're down in Virgin Islands, how much sun do they get down there? A ton, right? All year long, right? So a lot of these developing countries and these island countries are really going big into solar. This is kind of another racking for corrugated. So it's just like a bracket that fits over corrugated. It's like a lot of our Iowa barns that we have, corrugation. So we pull out the fasteners that go into the top cords, which are your rafters, pull those out, and go back right down in with these bolts, with these lag bolts, and then we build a rack, and then we connect the module to it. So we try to create a little space in between there because, during the summer months it gets hot, and anytime like summer conductivity, when you have hot, it starts to be less efficient. Here's another one. This is a single standing seam. So there's no rail on this. It just attaches right to the seam. That's a really good install. It's the lowest cost of solar right there. Because you have this extra rail you have to put down. So it's less labor, it's less material. Smooth. That's what it looks like. So this is basically a 112 pitch. So basically this thing's flat. All right? But it's interesting, I have this on my phone because I have an app, and I have a bunch of these that I can monitor. And I know, and you have to kind of know what the capacity is, you kind of have to know what the angles are, what the azimuths, how they're orientated. This one's basically flat, and it faces west. It really doesn't matter, because it's basically flat. And it's probably about a day and a half behind the system that faces directly south of the 30-degree pitch with snow on it. Which means the snow doesn't stay on stuff very long. Especially being flat. I mean, it's shocking, because you'll see it. You'll see it kick on, and you'll see, oh, it's barely making any power, and all of a sudden it'll take a little bit, and then boom. You'll see this huge spike. That's when all the snow just kind of melts off real quick. It's really interesting to watch these things. You can watch them real time too. Really neat. This is a monitoring box. All right, so we take all those inverters, we take all this data that's coming in, and we hook them all together, and it goes into this box. This box takes all that data, sends it out to a server. That server then you can get on by your browser called sunnyportal.com. You log into your account, you can see all your production. You can look at it per inverter. You can look at it as a full graph. And so the stuff kind of looks like this. Like that. So this is Washington, Iowa. Let's put the system. It's a 100 kW system. So this is probably 2 acres of solar. 2 acres of solar. He's doing about $16,000. You're doing $16,000 in 2 acres of corn. Right? Are you getting close?
Yeah.
So this is kind of what you want to look at. So this is a 100,000 watt system, right? So this is in November. So you know, the sun's not real super low, but this thing kicks on at like 8 o'clock in the morning. It starts driving up, and that's what you want to see. That's the kind of bell graphs that you want to see. You know, it peaks out. It's like, so this is all constant power. For every kW, it's about 1.3 horsepower. Okay, so about 100,000 watt system, you have 132 horsepower. I look at boat motor, right? 132. Well, we said a 50 every. I thought that was big. 150 is pretty big, right? So you think about that. That's what's on top of people's roofs when they're solar. And so somebody says, I have a 6 kW, that means they have a 7 horsepower engine on top of their house that's kicking power out to their grid, powering the building. Give you an idea. So how solar is going to kind of scale? 30% federal tax credit back in 2008 when they signed the Reinvestment Act. 30% tax credit on the full amount, just on the first $2,000. So say I spent 30 grand on a system, or 100 grand on a system. I got 30% off my first $2 grand. So I only got $1,800 back. Now I'm getting 30 grand back, right? Also you have depreciation. Makers, 5-year makers, modified accelerated cost recovery system. So in your business, you buy a piece of equipment, you can depreciate that. And there's certain percentages you can depreciate per year. This is on a 5-year schedule. State of Iowa, we got an 18% state tax credit, so it's 60% of the federal, up to 5,000 residential and 20,000 commercial. There's also RECs, renewable energy credits, or carbon credits. So when you create renewable energy, you have carbon to it because it's clean energy, right? So there's a value to that. It's a huge value to that. So you can sell these credits too. So there's certain markets in the country that have these credits that they sell, just like stocks, just like bonds, commodity, right? And it becomes more and more valuable as we price and partner. So like Mid-American, they're saving a ton of wind credits because they know in the future that renewable energy credits are worth like gold. Because we're starting to understand what power generation is doing to our environment. And we need to change this way. Production tax credits, that's another one, where you get tax credit on what your production is. And then rebates, you used to have rebates, we have upfront rebates. Like Lyman Territory used to have a $25,000 upfront rebate used to give on certain system sizes. So look, so this kind of gets you invested in Iowa, right? So if I spend $100,000 in Iowa on a system, I'm going to get about $30,000 federal tax investment credit back. I get 60% of that back from the state, so I get about $18,000 back. Right, so 60% of the federal, that's 18 grand. Plus my makers on the 30% tax bracket, which most of our farmers are at, some are 25, depending on how much money they make that year. That's another 25.5 coming over. So out of 100 grand, everything, all my incentives are down to 26,500. And I save about $4,000 a year. So about 6.7 years, right? So on a 10-year payback, it's 10% return on your money. It's pretty good. You know, this is 6.7-year payback, and that's with no inflation rate. You know, energy has about a 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on where you're at, it can inflate 10%. So let's say you get an inflation rate of 10%, boom, it's like bond yield, boom, your yield just goes up, right? So you basically fixed your energy cost, and you're just riding out as energy costs go up, you're making more money. So you're looking at about 6.7 years. So you said, so that's about, you know, about 15% return on your money. It's a pretty good investment, I think. If you ask people to put money somewhere, they put CDs. What are CDs? 2%. What's your savings account? 0.5%. Right? So you look at these investments, you're like, whoa, that's a pretty good investment. Right? All right, so this is some other stuff. This is kind of a cold draw. I want to show you that. I'm trying to show you some other. Yeah, let me see what I've done. This is like a megawatt. We did this job at San Jose Airport. It's like 3.4 acres of solar. That's a fairly large job. Here's another system. That's a 50 kW. That's in Golden, Colorado. Snowing that day. It was cold. For some reason, when I go up and take pictures of all these, they're always the sun's not out. I don't know why. There's another one. This is up in Monticello, Iowa. That's a 46 kW solar array. He's got a 55 kW wind, so he's completely off the grid. So this Hawk, he's got two of them. They're both, I don't know how many head they are, 2,400 maybe. But he's got a lot of big fans, and this is a lot of Iowa right here. We're seeing a ton of farmers do this in Iowa, especially in hogs. Because hogs are making a lot of money right now because corn prices are so low and hogs prices are up. That's another one, balancing system. Here's another one, another hog farm that I did up in Oline, Iowa. So he's got 3x1s, so the back of those modules are about 12 feet off the ground. And his hog farm runs north south, right? So he had to build the arrays in kind of a staggered setback position. There's one right near the Cedar Rapids Airport. It says Stanford, Iowa. We put the array in Iowa, and I put the I on the wrong side because I want to put the A later on. So it's going to be like AI, artificial intelligence. It's just like Frito-Lay. It was kind of a fun job. There's another one, another hog farmer. This is the one down in, that's the one that graph that you saw. This is down in Washington County. It's about 100 kW. So I did this job, a job like this about 3 years ago, and it was about $500,000. I did this job this past summer, it was $275,000. Right? So it shows you like where the costs are going. And we're not done yet. I mean, the modular costs are still, those are integrated power modules, those are my modules. I have my own module right out of Rockford, Illinois. Kind of make these guys brand our own. I don't own the plant, but they kind of brand for us. Because technology can change, and I really don't want to, put my money in technology when someone else do that. I'll just take their technology and get it in the market. Here's another. This is a residential system. I put this up with a buddy of mine. It took us 2 days to do it. I never installed solar in my life. It took us 2 days. Put the rack, put the little standoffs in, and put the rail across, we attached the modules, we connected them, and then the electrical contractor came in and put some boxes in and tied them all up and terminated them because they had the license to do that. But it took us like 2 days to do that job. Pretty easy. So yeah. All right, so that's solar in a nutshell. That's kind of the market here in Iowa. That's kind of I've been working on the last 4 or 5 years, and it's becoming more and more attractive and feasible for people to do it. You invest in solar and you make money. It's a bond, it's feasible, and it's only going to get better. It's only going to get more cost effective. And from what I've seen in the world, there's no stopping this technology. It's like a cell phone. Everybody's going to want it. Everybody's going to want to trade energy right from online. You're going to be able to pull up your smartphone and say, okay, the solar's going to crank out this much power today. I've got this much stored from yesterday in my battery bank. I'm going to have this much coming in. What's the energy markets in Iowa today when it's a peak demand in summers in July, when energy costs are real expensive because you have to run these peaker plants out there that only run during those times. So imagine you building a widget, or imagine building like a shoe company. You can only sell your shoes 30 days out a year. How expensive do those shoes have to be for you to pay for the whole year? Right? That's what peaker plants are. Peaker plants are only turned on when the peaks come. It's only like 40 days out of the year, so their energy is really expensive. Well, solar comes in and knocks out those peaks, because what makes the peaks is the sun. So these peaks are happening, solar is at its most potent production, which is great because it brings down the cost. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting. You start to see, small Africa. You go to these, you guys travel the world, you go to some of these developing countries. Energy costs are so expensive for these people. Their grid is awful. This technology is changing their life. You see little villages in Africa that have to put solar in now, and they're bringing their batteries up, and they're being able to take them home and power lights so they can read and go online and accelerate. Like I was in Tanzania. You maybe been to Tanzania? Hike Kilimanjaro, right? Kind of a cool deal. Arusha is one of the most poorest areas in Tanzania and in Africa. And there's this little school that was doing rotary. built a school on all road money from Australia, this woman did. And it's called St. Jude's. And they took the poorest kids in Arusha. But these kids are in Tanzania, and these kids have to write their name and all that. But, you know, you're looking at this, and I walk into this room, and there's computers all over the place. And this is one of the poorest countries in the world, right? There's a computer lab. And they got like 30 computers in there, and they got solar, and they're energized. I'm thinking, wow. Because back, if this solar wasn't around, these poor people, one, wouldn't have lights, and two, they just have books. They would only be able to learn from whatever they have there, right? The computer changes everything. Access, electricity changes everything, right? The rest of the world doesn't live like this. The rest of the world lives in dirt, poverty, right? But they're changing. If you go to China, 1.4 billion people, okay? 1.4. How many people in America? 315 million. 315 million, China's 1.4 billion, okay? Out of that 1.4 billion, 400 million, which is 100 million more than America, lives in the cities. The other billion people live in dirt, no electricity. But that's all changing. So they're industrializing in China at 1.4 billion people. When we industrialized in the 1940s and 50s, we did it like 80 million people. So they're industrializing at 10 times the rate. So imagine, and they're rich. I mean, you go to China, it's not just Beijing and 40 million people and Changchun and 30 million people. There are cities across that country that are 2 and 3 million people population that are multi-millionaires. I mean, China's a really interesting economy that's kind of got out in front. We're gonna have to deal with here in the next couple of years, because in 20 years, there'll be 3 billion Chinese and 2 billion Indian in the world. There'll be 9 billion people on the planet, and you've got 2 countries that have more population than the rest of the world. Imagine that, right? Imagine the competition as technology advances, as energy advances.
I was talking with the class earlier about this solar roadways entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know him? Can you comment on the viability of that?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, they're building these things that be able trucks to roll on them. You look at transportation, and you look at the electric car, but you also got to look at how we kind of move these things on roads. Where where I think that technology is eventually going to go is, you guys know what like electromagnetic trains are, right? Those work basically send electric current through some place magnet, right? Okay, well, if these roads are electric, they're going to basically tie in these roads and electrify cars, and keep the cars that kind of float. You may see Back to the Future, when they have like the magnet and floats. So in the future, our cars are going to sit on the ground, and they're going to pull out the energy charge off these electric roads, and they're going to be able to power the buildings. And yeah, I mean, they're on the right track. Because you look at the cost of what's going in our roads now, all the asphalt, and then our weather changes. Look at our roads in Iowa. Look at our roads across the country. Awful. Why? Because temperature's going up and down so much. We think, oh, it's great, it's 70 degrees here in Iowa in March. That's not good. That's not good when it's 70 degrees when it's supposed to be 30 degrees, right? Because all these other things are starting to warm up faster. All these animals are starting to have to go other places, and you start to lose crops. You start to lose the natural habitat that we normally are used to, that we bet on every day, that's changing. And what we do every day, we're changing it. Because we're burning energy, because of our lifestyles, and we're not taking care of the environment. I mean, there are 300,000 brownfields in America. You know what a brownfield is? It's a highly polluted, toxic area that some industrial company basically threw stuff all over the ground. There's 300,000 of those in the country, 300,000 plus. It takes almost $1 million right there just to clean the ground. $1 million times 300,000, right? That's just to clean the ground up. So why did that happen? Because we didn't have regulations. We didn't tell people, hey, you can't do that. You can't throw stuff into a lake, stuff into a river. That stuff still happens, right? And energy still happens, but we don't see it because it gets thrown up in there. And it falls down in our water, gets in our air. 70%, remember when you see a coal train, think about 70% of that coal being burned up in our own environment and falling down in our environment. In our water, we're breathing in every day. Think about it. When you're on your bike, you can smell petroleum. I bike a lot now. When I'm biking through Iowa City, I can just smell, petroleum when it's burned. And it's amazing when you kind of get back out to like the weird, just out. You can start to feel the pollution, to smell the pollution a lot more when you're more out there. And you're more aware of it too, because you understand the technology out there. You're like, wow. You see big puffs of smoke. I drive Mini Cooper, and these guys sometimes go past me. Huge trucks hit the gas and blow all the smoke. And I was like, really? So it's interesting. We have to change our mindset where, energy is a huge deal. Going forward, it's going to be salt. Hundreds of years ago, it used to rule the world. Imagine that, table salt. It used to rule the world hundreds of years ago. Now oil rules the world. In 20 years from now, people are going to laugh and say, God, oil ruled the world? Really? Because energy, in the end, is really not going to be worth anything because so much of it. It's basically when you have too much of something, it becomes nothing, right? But it's going to be your service of how that energy gets to you, how it's moved around, and how it's procured. We're going to pay for the service. Like your cell phone. I always wait for buy a cell phone for a penny, right? I got my i5 for like 1 penny or $1. So I waited, but I got to pay my service, but I got my technology for free. So you'll start to see this technology move that direction where you're paying for your service and get the technology. You actually use it. Any other questions? Anybody in environmental sciences? Anybody in electrical engineering? Anybody doing anything with that?
I've got a question. You mentioned that a lot of the viability might depend on utilities because they obviously don't want solar to happen because it's not them making the money. The power being fed back to the grid, they have to pay that. So how much of the future of this viability depends on utilities working with you or them not lobbying?
Quite a bit, quite a bit. Especially now, because they've got to see that this growth is still going to happen. What's really going to happen is it's going to be viable for people like Tesla right now, right? Everybody knows Tesla? They did the Tesla car, they got this killer battery. They're open source now, so they're telling everybody, hey, develop around our battery. Well, they're opening up this huge gigawatt battery plant out in California, and now they're going to come out next 6 months with a battery for the home. Elon Musk, right? Has SpaceX, and he's got the tube that he's talking about. You guys see that tube? You seen that? The little, it's a travel tube. Imagine, when you pull up the bank and you stick your little deal in there and it goes up the other side. Well, they're talking about having people travel like that. 3,000 to 4,000 miles per hour. San Francisco to New York takes you an hour to get there, right? So they're going to build this thing out in California. It's like a 4 or 5 mile track. It's in between, I think it's in between San Francisco and LA, but it's not a very big track. And they're going to have all these kids, all these colleges go out there and try to build these machines that can fit inside this track and make it the most efficient. It's brilliant. But he owns a solar company called Slevo. He just bought it. It's like one of the most efficient cells in the world. And they're opening up a huge gigawatt plant in New York. So they're basically going to flip the game. I mean, you get, at a certain point where the utility has to understand that this is changing and this is where it's moving. And whether they like it or not. So they have to figure out how to survive and how to change their business model. But everybody's got to work together to make that happen. Because what's eventually going to happen is the consumers are going to go, you know what? I'm going to buy solar, I'm going to get a battery, cut me off. And all of a sudden you lose that customer. Then you lose that customer, lose that customer. Well, you don't want to do that. The grid still has to be operable. You still have to have people pay in and have these avenues to get energy around because these big buildings are going to need homes to power those things during the day. So you gotta, but it's hard because utilities have been around a long time. They're usually older generations. And as you know, as your grandparents, what do? They don't want to change, right? They're stubborn, right? And they want reliability, and they want control. And when you have generation come in and your customer starts having its own generation, you lose control. And it's something they've never really been accustomed to because they've been around a long time, they've been on their market for a long time, and this is changing on them. This is a disruptive technology. That's one of the reasons why I got into it. This is fun. Like when you get to a technology and into a market where you're revolutionizing an industry that runs a huge part of economies, a huge part of the world, it's very exciting stuff, especially when you know where it's going, especially what it stands for. So for you got people out there that are looking for things to do. And we were talking about this earlier. Find something you're passionate in. Like when I went to Iraq, I went on 2 USO trips over there, and I saw our 18 and 19-year-old boys over there living in dirt, coming back here and committing suicide. Because they go over to Iraq, do 12 months, come back 2 weeks, go back over, come back, and they kill themselves. I'm thinking, you know what? It's a problem with me. I got a problem when my government sends some people over somewhere and they come back and they kill themselves in their own country, right? In 2013, we had over 60-some military people kill themselves a day. A day. And we support our military. This is supporting our military. This is supporting our energy. This is making a difference in Iowa for people. Because every Iowan that put this in makes their money, keeps their money here. It's clean, and we don't have to go over to Iraq anymore. So eventually solar is going to power cars. It's going to power trucks. It's going to power everything. you know? But we first got to get there, and we got to do it in a smart way where we don't cripple certain players in the market that have been around a long time. Because that can happen when technology becomes very feasible and become very attractive to the consumer. Because the consumer won't care, it'll go right at it. Well, that can create some problems. So we have to do a good job of creating, framework within the legislative process to make this happen. But as we're seeing, as climate changes, and we're seeing glaciers melting as fast as they are. I mean, I can remember when I ran track 20 years ago when I was in high school. It used to be freezing cold this time. We would have our first track meeting late March 28th. It would be like 30 degrees out. We'd be taking off our sweats because you had to really wear those thin little shorts. This is 20 years ago. And now it's 70 degrees on March 9th, March 10th. And you're thinking, whoa, that's not really normal. Especially when you've been around and you see things change. So, you got to look at all aspects. This industry and this technology is it's becoming more and more prevalent. It's the way that the market's going, the world's going. And it's exciting because it takes everybody to do it. Everybody's got to go into solar to make it happen. And you're part of the game, you're part of the solution. And you feel good about it. Like my farmer, he kicks his message to me all the time, saying, look what I'm producing today. I'm overpowering my building right now, it's going out to my community, it's powering these people around me. It's powerful stuff. When you think about that, you can put a system in, you can power your neighbor, and help them out, and help somebody else out, and help the community out. That's like social responsibility, and this has a lot to do with it. Anybody else? Anything fun going on campus?
How susceptible are those to like hail or environmental damage?
Pretty robust for hail. They are tested at a flat plate at 52 miles an hour, 1 inch hail. So when they're pitched, they basically bounce off. That was one of the first questions I asked one of the oldest installers in Iowa, Dennis Pomerantz out of Decorah. Go solar. He's been doing solar since the 70s. And I asked him, I said, all right, I'm getting in this industry, people know who I am. Like, I want to know, if hail happens, is this stuff going to take it? He's like, 10 of a problem. Having a wet module in the field be broken with hail. And it's tempered glass, so it just kind of bounces right off. So yeah. But if you have a big, huge, massive piece of hail, it's going to go through your roof, it's going to create some damage too. Yeah, when I looked at getting into renewables and trying to sell things to people, I can sell my football skills, because guess what? I played 10 years in the NFL, and I played in college, and I did all this, right? But when I got in this industry, people are like, you know what I'm talking about? So it's like, you got to do your research, because people put a lot of money in this stuff, and expect it to work right, and it does work right. You just got to engineer it the right way, you got to install it the right way, you got to use the right materials, you got to do all your calculations right, because there's not a lot of that in the industry right now, especially in the 70s. People were just throwing it in. They had no internet, so you couldn't monitor it. At the end of the month, you're like, okay, here's your bill. And you're like, okay, how much power did that actually from? Now you can monitor it. Now you can run voltage tests, and you can pull Google Earth up. And there's so much in the industry now that's streamlined. It's made a lot more cost effective. So yeah, but it's getting better, right? Like in the industry, every 6 months seems like some changes. Module efficiencies are getting bigger, inverters are getting better, less cost, less pieces, better racking. So, and then you got other type of financing methods like crowd sharing. There's a company called Mosaic, where if you become a member, you can actually get a permanent financing for a job. So they go out and they vet solar projects, and then they'll give you like a 4.5% return on your money. So you actually own solar projects in other parts of the country. So you can promote solar that way instead of owning the system. You can do the financing for people. So it lets people kind of get involved in different ways.
What rate, so if you buy power for 10 cents a kilowatt, what rate do you sell it back to the power company? Are you at bulk rate or
So I hear net metering rate. So net metering is you can push back at what you use, and then at the end of the year. So what happens is when we do a system, we look at your full usage, right? And we figure out what a system's going to produce over that year. Well, during the June months or January months, it's going to produce less, and then as the summer months go, you get more sun hours. Just like we saw during the day, it acts just like that during the year. All right, so we figure out a system to push out that much power that you're going to use. So some months you might buy for the utility, other months you might bank it forward. Now some utilities like RECs, they kind of got away from banking forward, so they kind of limited the capacities now of solar in certain markets. So when you look at certain markets in Iowa, you got to understand what your interconnection agreements are. So like in Alliant and Mid-American, which are investor-owned utilities, they are regulated by the state. So the state tells them that they have to do this. So you can build up to what you buy. Or you can offset to what you buy at the retail. If you overpush power at the end of the year, then they buy back at their wholesale cost. So that's the big rub between utilities. What's solar worth? What's the value of solar? We call it VOS, value of solar tariff. Okay, and you got to look at all these attributes that solar does to the grid. It's clean, it creates jobs, it creates grid stability, it creates reliability, it creates resiliency. Like if you had solar all over Des Moines or all over here at Pella, you know, and there was a, you know, we got invaded or something like that, and because our grid is very delicate right now, how we built this thing. But if you had solar all over the place, it would keep very resilient, right? Because if we knocked out someone's house with a solar power plant, well, yeah, we lost 5,000 watts of generation, but we got all these other generators right here, right? We knock out a big coal plant that's out in the middle of nowhere, it's hard to protect, boom, you just knocked out 100 million watts. Boom, you shut down the whole town of Pella. And you're screwed, right? You got nothing. Now you gotta bring in oil, you gotta keep on generators. You have solar throughout your area, throughout your grid. There's a lot of resiliency in that. You know, so you gotta build all these little, well, that's cost this much, and that's worth this much, and then the environmental benefits are worth this much, the job creation is worth this much, and next thing you know, you gotta come to a certain point of what your kilowatt hour cost is, like what the real value of solar is. And over the years, people haven't understood this value because solar hasn't been around. Well, now we're starting to understand the value, so we have to fight the utilities and try to get the value. Like in Minnesota, they have a value of solar tariff, and they have a net metering tariff. Well, the utility, the value of solar tariff is 13 cents. The net meter is 10 cents. The utility gets the option. So they take the 10 cents, even though the energy's worth 3 cents. So imagine you buying a stock that's worth 13 cents, and you're only paying 10 cents over it, right? Crap, right? But that's the way the market is, because they've got control. They've got control of utility boards, they've got control of legislators, and these are the things that you have to break down with new markets, and you change corporations that are worth billions and billions of dollars. Like every day I go to war with Warren Buffett. He's the richest guy in America. But every day we're putting solar in his market. We're eating away at his market every single day we put solar in. And it's happening in his market now. Alliance Territory. This guy doesn't like solar, and he's don't like it. He didn't like it very much, but we put a ton of solar in his market. But we make it better. That's the thing that these guys understand. We're putting in a technology that has no operating cost to it. These coal plants, these nuclear plants, and all these natural gas plants, those things move, right? So it's cost. Who pays for that cost? All the ratepayers pay for it. Because by law, these guys have to make a return on their equity. They buy a power plant, they're guaranteed that. If they have to spend money, they get up rates. And what's the ratepayer have to do? They got to pay them. Do they have an option? No. That's why this industry hasn't changed in 100 years. Because there's been no competition. Now we're providing competition. Like, I've been sitting on the sideline in a track meet, looking for a 100-meter dash, and I'm in my sweats. You know, these things called power purchase agreements, right? So a power purchase agreement is where I can come to Pella, put solar on top of these buildings and stuff power behind the meter to Pella, or into Pella and also to Central, right? It's called a power purchase agreement. Before that was illegal. So we took the utilities to court and said, hey, we're not public utilities, we're service providers, and this is behind the meter. This isn't me putting a big plant out in the middle of nowhere and shipping it on your lines and dropping it into Pella and the Central. This is me going on top of their buildings and powering them from the backside. So we had to take them to court. 2 years we took them to court, and we won. So now it's legal for us to come in and provide power to people. So what is that? It's competition, right? It's going to make the market better. It's going to make the market less cost, more effective. And that's what we're doing. And they don't like that. Because imagine you own it. Imagine, you know, you, right here, you own it and power all these people. If they have to eat, they have to buy food from you. Well, then all of a sudden I come in with my food truck. I'm like, what's up? You know, I got some sweet stuff. It's like clean and it's good and it's organic. And I was saying like, hey man, this is my people. You can't sell to them. I'm like, oh, well, I'm selling them right now. And I move in and I change the market on you. You've owned that market for all these people for 100 years. You're pissed, right? And these people, these utility boards that said you can have this market are not helping me change the market on you. And you're going, wait a minute. I've been guaranteeing this for a long time. We have these investments. We have the grid upkeep. And now the people I'm selling to now are pushing the food back at me and another competitor that's giving a better product. Whoa, right? So utilities are faced with, you know, a crossroads right now, how they're going to survive in this game, because this is changing the game on them. It's like the cell phone when different landline companies, like AT&T. AT&T used to all own landlines. Eventually they're like, okay, we're going to lose, right? So what they do? They go into cell phones. They move with the market. And that's what these utilities have to do. They have to move with the market, because this is going to help America. I mean, we're less than, you know, coal is 80% or 60% market share, right? They have 80,000 people. 60% market share. 80,000 people. Solar, 0.4% market share, 200,000 people. So when we're 60% market share, how many jobs are we going to have in this country? Millions of jobs. Millions of jobs. And that's just not an installation, it's engineering, it's manufacturing, that's selling restaurant credits, it's opening up all these new markets, all these new ways to sell energy. It's exciting. When you think about it, think about the Kuwaitis. Think about putting your $100 over there and getting $25 back. Well, I want the opposite. You know, I want the $25 over there and I'm going to get $100 back. Like when I went to Belize last week, my dollar was $2 Belize. Oh, sweet. You know, I was buying a beer down there and it was $1. I was like, man, this is great. I come back here, a beer's $6. I'm like, man, I'm getting screwed. This deal, you know? So, but anyway, any other questions really quick? No, nothing's going fun on campus? Yeah? Huh?
Oh, let's all thank Tim for coming. He's going to hang around for a minute if people have additional questions, but thanks again.